Okay, hello, and welcome to this eSchool News webinar, Remote Learning Insights, How to Bring Students Back Successfully. My name is Kevin Hogan. I am the editor-at-large for eSchool News, and I'm excited to have you join us for what should be a very informative session. Today's webinar is sponsored by Epson America. Epson, the #1 selling projector brand worldwide, creates innovative projection technologies for business, education, and the home. Incorporating industry-leading 3 LCD technology, Epson offers a complete line of interactive, ultra-portable, and installation projectors designed to deliver quality, reliability, and cost-effective performance. Epson laser displays come from a company that's been a trusted education partner for over 25 years, with over 10 million students learning on Epson displays every day. With me today is a panel of EdTech industry veterans that I know will provide some great insights into this very important topic. Be sure to ask questions using the Q&A tool below. I'm sure everyone is unfortunately pretty savvy in Zoom by now, so please feel free to ask any questions and we will work them into the conversation. First, I'd like to introduce Jason Meyer. Jason has worked for Epson America since 2008. In his current role as Group Product Manager for commercial projectors. Jason's team manages Epson's education and meeting room projector product lines for North America. Prior to joining Epson, he worked at Belkin International for 11 years. Also with us today is Dan Warren. Dan has been with the Des Moines Public Schools for more than 40 years. He started in technology in 2000 as a network specialist and has been Director of Technology Operations since 2010. He leads the department, providing service and support to more than 70 buildings. The department provides secure, reliable, and integrated technology solutions that align with its academic and administrative goals and collaborates to provide leadership and planning for the effective and strategic use of emerging technologies. And also with us today is Mark Hess. Mark is currently the principal at Mary Helen Guest Elementary School. Mark has served in a variety of roles since he was hired by the district in 1993, including Executive Director of Instruction, Technology and Assessment, Director of Technology and Data Analysis. He has been a middle school principal, assistant principal, middle school teacher, and elementary teacher. Mark, is that it? Any others?
That about covers it.
Mark is passionate about the student learning and engagement through instructional innovation and remains steadfast in his belief that all children can be successful. So at this point, I will hand the conversation over to Jason and we can get into the weeds. Jason, it's all yours.
All right. Thank you, Kevin. And good morning to everybody, or good afternoon, depending on where you are. Thanks for joining us today. After a very challenging year in which schools across the country had to quickly pivot to virtual learning and reimagining the classroom, school districts around the country are looking to transition back into classrooms. The goal of this webinar is to provide insights and reflect on the successes and lessons of the past school year and learn what they anticipate the future of learning to look like. We welcome today Mark Hess, principal of Mary Helen Guest Elementary School in Walled Lake, Michigan, and Dan Warren, Director of Technology Operations for Des Moines Public Schools in Des Moines, Iowa. We look forward to sharing their experiences with remote learning and how they are shifting back to in-person learning. Mark, Dan, thanks for being here today. Good seeing you guys again.
Hello everybody. Good seeing you.
So let's get started. I think I'll start with a question for both of you. As we started, could you both share a quick update on what your school and district have done this school year, remote, hybrid, or in person? And what initiatives were you focused on during the year? Dan, you want to start?
Sure. Well, the initiative that for this year was the well-being of our staff and students. So we check up on them on a daily basis just to make sure they're okay and see what's going on, and we haven't lost anyone. As we know, we started out the year in full remote. As the year progressed and the numbers of the positivity rate of COVID went down, we offered a hybrid choice of either 50% in person or a full remote. At that time, we had about 40% in person and 60% remote. Today, we give the parents a choice of in-person 5 days or fully remote. So now our numbers have flipped. We have about 60% in class and about 40% remote. And our initiative this year was simply to keep up with everything and to do everything in our power to keep the students from falling behind. We do well-being checks, as I said, on a daily basis, and we keep progress of our students on a daily basis. We knew full well what the challenges would be, and even with our best efforts and doing the best we could, we knew that we were going to lose kids and families. It was inevitable. So we worked hard on getting devices in all the students' hands and make sure they could connect. So that was really our initiative this year, is to hand out over 20,000 devices to kids and about 6,000 hotspots, and just to make sure that they could connect and keep the learning environment going strong.
Yeah. Dan, are you at this point, are you done sort of with all the student device rollout? Like, do you feel like,
Yeah, we are done, but yeah, we are done with that, but we're in the midst. We lease our devices, so we're in the midst of collecting devices and handing out new ones. And so that's kind of hard because we still got 40% of our kids remote. We're doing really well. I was really surprised too with that we did not lose many machines. I mean, we were able to keep track, and the students and families helped us with that. And so to our surprise, we had a really good turnout with that. So like today, like I said, we're in the midst of switching out new machines for new ones. So.
Great. Hey, Mark, how about you?
Yeah, sure. So, the foundation of what we have been doing is that our mission continues, our obligation to educate, provide high quality education and learning experiences for all of our kids, pre-K through 12. We are back in person. We offer since the fall as an option, and we're also offering 2 virtual options. We offer a synchronous option and an asynchronous option. The asynchronous option is there for our working moms and dads or families that might not be able to provide the kind of supervision during the regular school day. So with our synchronous virtual classes, the kids log in on the Google Classroom platform with their virtual teacher, just like a normal school day from 9 o'clock till 3 o'clock. They travel through their school day. They have breaks, recess, lunchtime. They attend their elective courses, the art, the music, the PE. Those teachers are teaching virtually. So those kids follow pretty much the same curriculum, the same scope and sequence, but they're clustered in a virtual classroom. Our asynchronous option is we partnered with Edgenuity, a virtual learning platform, and those kids take grade level appropriate coursework, but it's at their own time. They could log in at 8 o'clock at night, 7 in the morning, the weekends, and then we provide a mentor for them. We provide learning mentors from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. for those students. We're at about 60% back in person every day, and about 40% online. Of that 40%, about 30% have chosen our synchronous option and about 10% asynchronous option. There have been a couple of times this year where in person we've had to close for 10 days, 14 days. If the COVID cases or the quarantine is, to err on the side of caution. But we just flip the switch. Kids go home, they have Chromebooks, and the next day they log into the Google Classroom, and we just switch to virtual learning until we're ready to come back in person. But, and Dan mentioned it, the well-being checks, it's the social emotional part. We know the academics will be there. We know that, this past 24 months, or 12 months have been, please hope it's not 24 months. The past 12 months have been difficult. So we really want to make sure that we're attentive to the social emotional needs, not just of the kids, but of the teachers and the staff as well.
Yeah, thanks. I think it's interesting to hear how, the majority of your kids are back in school, right? And depending on where you are in the country, that can be completely different. I'm out here in the Los Angeles area. the LAUSD school district, for example, is still primarily remote, right? This giant district trying to figure out the best solution. But I was looking at our poll here, and it looks like the majority of people in the poll, at least, were hybrid now, right? So really interesting. So Mark, staying with you, this has been your first year back as principal after leading the district's instructional technology initiative. What are the biggest differences or challenges for you, and how are you addressing them?
Sure. Yeah, good question. I think when I was the director of technology and working at a central office, my focus was largely about large-scale rollouts, deep implementation of instructional technology, really with a laser focus on the instructional side, making sure that our teachers had the appropriate equipment, the technologies to really embed, cutting-edge technology into their daily instruction. I think now that I'm back in the building and working with all staff, one of the things that I've noticed during this pandemic is we need to do a better job of casting a wider net of making sure our secretaries, our paraeducators, our support staff are well-versed in the technology as well. When we came back in the fall, I would, in the office here, we were getting dozens of phone calls a day from parents, rightly so, who were in need of tech support, because now all of a sudden we put hundreds of our parents at home with their child with a Chromebook and Google Classroom and Zoom or Google Meet or whatever the learning platform is, and those parents are now taking on the role of not only facilitating learning at home, but also that instructional tech coach at home and trying to troubleshoot. Yeah. Our support staff, our secretaries that were answering the phones, we needed to do a better job of making sure they were well-versed and understood the different technologies, the language, the vocabulary of the technology, and how to help parents. We just did not have enough technology staff to not only service the in-person learners and staff inside the schools, but also those that were learning remotely. So we pivoted a little bit and we provided some on-demand training and really tried to make sure as a learning system, as an organization, all of our staff were well-versed, so we could just kind of be that conduit, that extension of the tech department to reach out and help our families. And that was an easy fix, really. That's more of a procedural, structural. I think our biggest challenge was really understanding the needs of families and being there, that community support, and realizing that, we needed to help them, everything from providing meals, providing services, just kind of, really wraparound services. Where I live in Michigan, like I'm sure in many states, a lot of our community programs, our mental health services, a lot of our community social programs just no longer exist. So the school kind of becomes that hub, not only a learning hub, but helping families connect with community resources and outreach and counseling and social work and those type of services. So we've been spending a great deal of time with those wraparound services to our families that could that need it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just certainly huge challenges all around. I think, my own experience, I have a 7th grader, and she, all of a sudden overnight, she's doing everything from home. There's a lot of frustration around, in the beginning, especially, there's a lot of frustration around logins and,
Sure.
And there's multiple different logins, and then there was technical issues, but I was very impressed actually at how well the district handled it, responded to things. It wasn't perfect and there was a lot of problems, but that was to be expected. And I did, I think I just told my daughter, I said, look, you're frustrated. Imagine how frustrated your teachers are and the school is and all of that stuff. So, it's a huge challenge. And so what about successes, Mark? What was the biggest success you think that came out of it?
Yeah, sure. I think one of the biggest successes was that the way our teachers adapted. I look back a year ago, I think it was right around St. Patrick's Day when in Michigan, we closed our schools early March there, maybe the second week of March. And we had to pivot within a couple of days. We sent all the kids home on a Friday. We knew we weren't coming back that following Monday, but we were ready to go with live synchronous lessons that following Wednesday. So we worked over the weekend, put together a robust 2-day of training in PD, had teachers and administrators working around the clock. And so our kids really had just 2 days of downtime. And that Wednesday, we flipped a switch and we were remote. It was bumpy at first, there's no doubt about it. But we were connecting. We felt it important that the kids had some kind of connection with their teacher. It may have not been 6 hours of direct teaching and learning, but at first, every day there was daily contact, a daily lesson, visual contact, interaction, building that team up, that virtual team. And then it just became a robust, just a learning environment that the kids and the teachers really, they adjusted quite well. And so that was, I just applaud everybody, the parents, the staff. This was the year that we had to show a lot of grace, a lot of forgiveness. Everyone was in it the first time. There was no pointing fingers. We are helping each other out. Everyone was frustrated at times, but we did not let that get us down. And everyone was patient. They really were. And so it just showed me that in the time of crises that, people can pull together, problem solve, persevere. And no matter what was going on, the question was always, well, what's best for kids? What can we do to help the kids? And that has just really persevered through the last year.
Yeah, right. That's the most important thing. I may have mentioned this in our first webinar, but my mom was a teacher, and it just, even to this day, she's retired now. It's just like, it takes a special person to do what you guys do, and the dedication to, just getting it right for the kids is what really impressed me about the whole thing. So Dan, last spring, your district was very focused on addressing equity and making sure every student was connected. How has this evolved over the last 12 months? And how is it similar or different from last spring?
Well, sure. Everything we do is around equity and inclusion. We've made sure the kids were not only connected, but they had a good connection, a good user experience. Mm-hmm. Handing out a hotspot to a family of 4, we know that's not going to be a good user experience. We learned very quickly, once we can get our hands on some hotspots, that we handed out 1 per kid, so they would have a better user experience. And then what we did too, if for some reason the families could not afford that, the district did step up and paid for that, and today we still are paying for that connectivity. And for the families who could afford it, what we did, the parents were working from home and they were all using the same connection, so we worked with them to get them in touch with our local internet provider to get them a low-cost connection. And our local provider offered a program called Connect to Compete. So we were able to get a connection, a really good connection for families that, was a hardwired modem. It wasn't a hotspot. So we were able to get that for $9.95 a month. And again, if they could not afford that, the district paid for that. So we worked on getting every kid a hotspot, every kid a good device, and just to make sure they had a good experience. Equity is really important, but you also got to talk about equality. I mean, you have a family of 5 on a hotspot, like I mentioned earlier, that's just not going to work. So today, I think, we still get requests for connectivity. We have a very mobile, diverse community. We have a lot of families move. So, just trying to keep track of that, especially if we were working with a local internet provider on a modem connection. If that family would move, we would have to make sure that connection moved with them. If we had families that were going to grandma and grandpa's houses during the day, we had to make sure they had a hotspot. So we just really wanted to make the user experience as clean as possible, do what we could for that, give them a good device and a good connection. And today, I think, we survey our students on a regular basis, and have recently in the last 2 or 3 months, I've gotten some pretty good results, and along with staff. And then too, not only with the connectivity, but as Mark mentioned, the social emotional learning was very important to us too. So the district decided to hire, and this was kind of in the works, but COVID kind of ramped it up, but we hired a social emotional learning coordinator. And he's come in and he's a product of Des Moines Public Schools. He's a young man. And he's just doing a terrific job. So we're going through a lot of SEL, social emotional learning training, not only for students, but for staff also. So the connectivity piece, again, like I said, was real important. And I think we've got that down. Is it a long-term solution? No, it's a short-term solution, but we are working. I'm a part of a committee here in the state of Iowa. We're working with 10 different counties on broadband. And in fact, I just left a meeting this morning to doing a survey and working with a consultant on the assessment, just to do the need assessment. And then we'll turn around and work with our state and local and city and school boards to do more about broadband statewide. So we've been working hard on the connectivity piece.
Yeah, I mean, it takes an incredible amount of partnership, right, between local, state, local, governments,
right,
local internet providers and technology providers. I mean, the fact that you guys are able to do that in such a short period of time is really impressive, right? Because that's not something you normally do. You have to
work, right,
and it's like very sort of escalated and urgent, fashion to get all of this stuff in place. And
well, even you have to work with several. Yeah, you have to work with several partners too with the connectivity piece, because you might have one area of the city that one provider works better than another. So we've dealt with that, and so we had 3, 4, 5 actually different vendors that we were working with to make sure that we had a decent connection for all our kids.
Amazing.
And school districts, ordinarily we're not involved in utilities, right? So in year 2021, broadband internet connectivities like electricity, gas, sewer, water. School districts were thrust into this environment where we needed to provide this utility to our families that needed it. And Dan is right. I mean, partnering with the different local cable providers, providing hotspots, doing whatever we can. But that was something that districts ordinarily wouldn't necessarily be involved in. But there was just this responsibility that we need to teach these kids. We need to not only just teach these kids, we need to connect them with their teacher, with their peers that they're familiar with. They need to see them every day. They need to interact with them. It may not be in person, but we're going to interact virtually. And we stopped using the word social distance and just said physical distance. So we're going to be physically distant, but socially we're going to remain as connected as we can.
Yeah, that makes sense. So Mark, with your school being open for in-person learning throughout the fall, can you share some of the strategies your school implemented to successfully remain open?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So that was a period of adjustment, helping our staff and our community, the students, but, keeping the kids separated by cohorting. All of our students have numbers. We have what's called sit spots, which are little sticky, like Velcro that on the carpet, on their chairs. So, if I'm number 12 in the 4th grade classroom, I'm number 12 in the cafeteria, I'm number 12 in the media center, I'm number 12 in the gym class. That helps us with our contact tracing, using desk shields, wearing masks, hand sanitizing stations throughout, dividing the playground up into quadrants. So only certain classes play in each different quadrant. Really, spacing the kids out on the bus, redesigning our lunchroom and having kids only face one way, 6 feet apart. All those just routines were introduced just to try to minimize, the spread of the virus. Utilizing all of our entrances. So if you ride the bus, you only use this door. If you are a walker, you only use this door. If you're a parent pickup, you only come in this door. Very methodical, very deliberate. Dismissal, arrival, it's all staggered, so we don't have all the kids in the hallway at once. Dismissal, we usually start, it takes about 30 minutes, but we slowly release the kids, by grade level. So it's just a very methodical, very aware of making sure that we can't we can't keep everybody 6 feet apart in an elementary school, but we can be cognizant. We can practice, physical distancing. And I think our contact tracing has been really our advantage, because if a student does have to quarantine, or a family member is tested positive, or a staff member or a student is positive, it doesn't take us long to do the contact tracing and reach out to those families and pull those students. We seldom have to send a whole class home or a grade level because of that.
So I'm just curious, and maybe you could tell me just briefly, how did you design, maybe the question is, who is responsible for designing all of these sort of processes, right, to keep
Sure.
kids safe? So, contact tracing and all of this stuff, was it a collaborative effort across
Sure.
the administration, or how'd that work?
Absolutely, just a complete team effort. I look back at last summer, the month of June, July, and August, and there was no letdown in the work with the staff, the teachers, the administrators, my colleagues at the other schools, having committee, pulling research from the Center of Disease Control, the county health department, in really putting some parameters in place. We needed to honor that every school is a little bit different. I'm in a district where there's 19 schools. We're 60 square mile footprint. We cover 9 different municipalities. So we had to make sure that we were consistent with doing what we can for health and safety, also honoring that every school might be a little bit different. Cafeterias might look a little bit different. The hallways might look a little, classrooms. But we had some non-negotiable parameters, and then every school was able to work with their team. Every school kind of had a COVID team, like a crisis team of support staff, administrators, our parent leadership, our local PTO, PTA presidents, all working together to see what would be viable. And the district was very supportive, making sure that we had the appropriate PPE, before school started. And it looked a little bit different, but when we opened up our doors that first day of school, what was familiar to the kids was the faces. We may have had masks on, and the kids saw us from, the eyes up, but they heard our voices. They recognized us. And to them, everything else was just, really a non-factor. Kids have been great about masks and hand sanitizing and dust shields and trying to stay, 6 feet apart. To them, that's, they've been very resilient.
Yeah. Good. Got it. Dan, I remember hearing about your district's virtual school in the last webinar and how it helped with the transition to remote learning. Can you give us an update on that and how the curriculum your district created for it helped during the school year?
Sure. Having that virtual campus already in place really gave us a head start to really go into to enhance and to grow our virtual modality. We had the framework all set up at the secondary level, so that was really nice. Like I said, gave us a head start. We looked at several different canned curriculum that we were going to purchase, and we'd had purchased some previously, but our executive director of teaching and learning just didn't feel it was rigorous enough. She just didn't want to stamp her name on that. So the district got together and we funded and hired our own content developers. The last count, I think we had 10. There might be more than that now. And that's our full-time job, is creating content. I think last I heard there was 250 or 300 courses already built and out in our LMS Canvas. And that enrollment has just increased. And I think that enrollment's going to continue to increase. Post-COVID, we expect it to increase. Not only has the program become very popular, but around the state it's becoming competitive. I mean, there's a lot of different school districts trying it. There's a lot of online schools that are competing with us. But we have to market ourselves as the best. So that's where I think our curriculum being more rigorous, having that in place now for 3 years has just really helped us be in a good spot. Pre-COVID, I believe we had 400 kids enrolled in our virtual campus. now, you know, I really can't tell you who's enrolled in that now because of COVID, because we've expanded that to so many different families. But I think next year, like I said, they're going to market it. And I mean, we now have it's an actual high school with our Department of Ed. So it's a certified high school. So yeah, I think we're in good shape there. And I just see that to continue to increase. We get a lot of calls cross state lines. You know, we've had quite a few families. Like I said earlier, you know, we have 101 languages in Des Moines Public Schools. So we had a lot of our students, especially ELL students, who have left the country to go home for extended visits. Had hard times getting back because of COVID, things of that nature. And so they're still enrolled in our schools. They're still online teaching from all over the country. We had a couple of kids in Phoenix, you know, like I said, so it's across lines now. So it's going to become competitive. We need to market it and just really make that a revenue generator in the future for our district.
Yep. Great. You know, so this question is really for both of you, but obviously teachers are having a lot of challenges, I'm sure. It's a big adjustment for them. And how are your districts supporting teachers as they get ready to transition or already back in the classroom, you know, working in the classroom? Specifically, how are you guys supporting them and their you know, concerns and challenges?
So it's a good question because, you know, understandably so, we had, you know, teacher staff that were concerned in terms of, you know, the pandemic and COVID, and we allowed teachers that if they wanted to stay remote and teach remote, they could. We had a form that they could fill out, and there was different tiers, so to speak. So if we had a staff member who had an underlying condition, personally had a health condition that would preclude them from coming back and teaching in person, they were prioritized to make sure that they stayed home and could teach remotely. A second tier were staff members who cared for a loved one or had somebody in their house that had a underlying, you know, autoimmune disease, for example. Those were the second tier that were allowed to stay home. And then the third were just teachers that didn't necessarily have a medical reason, but just felt that it would be safer for them. Then those teachers were, most of them were accommodated. All of the teachers in the tier 1 and 2 were accommodated. And we've been able to maintain that throughout the year. The other thing is we worked with our teachers union and provided extra personal days. If teachers needed to quarantine or to stay home because of illness, and we know how teachers are, you know, in any other year, teachers are coming to school with the sniffles or allergies, or they're not feeling well, and they just fight through it throughout the day. But we wanted to make sure that teachers and all staff, really all, you know, secretaries, support staff, administrators, you know, if you're sick, you're sick, and we want you to stay home. So we did not penalize teachers. You know, charge them sick days. We added additional personal days. We just worked together to make sure, and you know, we're stubborn educators. We're all stubborn. You know, we tried through everything, and so we had to, you know, be mindful and police ourselves and say, hey, I think you need to go home, or, you know, talking to my secretaries who's not feeling well. It's like, it's okay. You know, nobody's going to think anything less of you if you stay home for a day or two and rest up and get your strength back. We need everybody healthy and sharp. And I think we all learned how that we can work at home remotely and work well at home, and we'll get through this. So a lot of grace to just being patient with everybody, right? There was no handbook. There was no blueprint that say, okay, how does a K-12 organization, you know, operate in a global pandemic? We are building the airplane as it was in the air.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's super stressful all around, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very similar to Mark's remarks here in Des Moines. You know, Mark said it, empathy and grace. I mean, if now's the time to show that. So we did everything we could. We had different tiers, like Mark mentioned also. If there was underlying conditions with teachers, there was a form they could fill out, and we accommodated all that. We also reached out. We had parent volunteers come in and help, especially when we had at our middle school level, we had teachers teaching in person and remote at the same time. That is a lot to ask of a teacher. So we had parent volunteers come in and associates come in and help with that. We also worked with our HR and benefits department. We increased the amount of sick leave that could be used, not only for themselves, but for family. Just really, like Mark said, showed a lot of empathy and grace. We just, told people, if they were sick, stay home. If the teachers are quarantining, we made sure that they could teach virtually from home. Teachers, it's been a tough year it's been a tough year for everybody, but teachers, they need a break every now and then, especially through a year like this. We're trying to talk about, what's next and, how are we going to make up for some of this time? And so we're going to offer a very rigorous summer program this year, but how in our good conscience could we go out and ask teachers to even do more? So it's not really mandatory for these teachers to come in and work this summer. We've had a lot of teachers step up and are going to do this. But yeah, they need a break. And so we're doing, like I said, we're doing everything we can with some volunteers, some associates to come in and assist. And just like I said, it's just empathy and grace. It's all about that. I mean, it's just been a tough year for everybody all around. And so we've done everything we can to accommodate almost everything.
Yeah, got it. Great. Thank you. So Mark, I understand your teachers use Epson Brightling projectors and document cameras as part of the technology in their classrooms. Do you have any examples of how they're being used in a socially distant or physically distant classroom?
Yeah, sure. It was very important for our teachers from day one to try to the best that they could, mimic their instructional hub from the physical classroom, bringing it home and setting it up in their home classroom. Teachers did yeoman's work of taking a corner of the house, a basement, a spare bedroom, a kitchen table, and transforming it into their virtual learning hub. The document camera went home with them. They all used the document camera as just an extension of the instructional delivery process. The projectors are a little bit of a different story because they're short throw projectors mounted against the whiteboard. But they tapped into the tools and their resources, the web-based strategies, whether it be something in our district, we use a program from Curriculum Associates called iReady. We tried to make things as consistent and as comfortable and familiar with kids as possible. So things like Padlet or, all those tools that they would use, in the classroom, the teachers are continuing to use, virtually, the Google Classroom or the Google Meet or, any of those web-based tools from our curriculum textbook companies. But all the teachers will tell you that the document camera at their side really allowed them to, create a classroom that was as similar as possible to a real life classroom in school. We also learned that having 2 monitors, and so where we could, supporting teachers with multiple monitors certainly helped. Headphones, microphones. It took us a while to figure out what teachers needed. We needed to put our feet in the water and have the teachers let us know. And it provided us the summer months to purchase materials, to train teachers, and fare's not always equal, right? And so what a middle school teacher might need is different than what a kindergarten teacher might need. So just trying to meet the varying degrees of needs. And again, the fundamental question is, well, what do you need to do, to reach the kids? And it will try to support you. So it was, having the document camera, though, by far was the #1 resource that our teachers said they just had to have.
Yeah, well, I have two comments. One is we've seen unprecedented demand for document cameras, so we just can't build document cameers fast enough.
Yeah.
Actually, and it's across the industry, all the document
Sure.
camera providers, and so yeah, I think we've seen teachers using document cameras in really interesting ways. It's a great tool. My second comment was, boy, it's nice you guys have basements in the Midwest, because we don't have basements in California. So like I'm looking for places to hide from my dogs and my family and everything else while I'm trying to work. It'd be nice to have a basement. What was my next? Dan, I know your schools were virtual for a while this fall, so school buildings were empty. Can you share a little bit about the maintenance and renovations you did during that time?
Oh, sure. Well, obviously, the first thing we did, it gave us a lot more time to deep cleanse our buildings. I mean, to go in and really clean them. And then too, it gave our operations staff time to go in and get some of the summer cleaning done. So they were in, waxing floors and doing their thing like they usually do in the summer. They just got a really good head start on that. But along with that, it went in and gave us a chance to work with our mechanical systems, enhance the air circulation. I mean, we're spending a lot of money today going in and either replacing or enhancing air handlers, to get the circulation better. We also got ahead of a lot of our construction projects. We every year we have a 5-year plan on construction, and we're in year 3, I believe, now of a 5-year, and adding classrooms and gyms, and so we got a head start on a lot of that. My team went in and we have now started to install Epsons in all our gyms. We had Epsons installed in all our classrooms a few years back. And so we're starting to replace some of those as they age, because it's been about 8 years now since that project started. But now we're going in and we're adding them in gyms. We're building a couple new auditoriums. So it gave us, time to get ahead of that. Going in and doing maintenance work on all the Epson projectors that are already there, PA systems, time clocks, security cameras getting cleaned, all that stuff. So we're in really good shape for next fall. I mean, we got a really good head start on that. And that was one of the questions early on, what are we going to do with all these people? The last thing we didn't even consider laying off or anything like that. We were going to do everything we could to keep people, and we did. And so, like I said, they all went in and they put gangs together to go into a building and then just go through it, get it, like I said, deep cleansed and cleaned. But a lot of the maintenance is now done, and we're ready for next fall. So
yeah, great. Yeah, I know air handling is a huge issue, right? It's especially in these big districts that have lots of buildings. It's a huge undertaking, right? To upgrade and clean all of the air handling systems. That's one of the things I know in LA that they're grappling with. So very interesting. So we have a little bit of time left, and so I have a final question for you both. I know districts everywhere have experienced a lot of unexpected challenges in the past year. Could you tell us what you think are your biggest takeaways? And is there any advice you'd want to offer other districts?
Well, I'll go ahead and start on that one. I go back to connectivity. There's an issue across this country with connectivity in homes. So I think that is something, and I think that I know work started here in Iowa to really take a serious look at that. Like I said, I'm on that committee, the broadband committee, studying that now. But there is such an inequity with broadband, and there's just has and have-nots, and it's just that needs to be taken. That really needs to have a serious look taken at it. As someone said earlier, it's like a utility. People turn on a light, they expect it to come on. Well, that's the same way with connectivity. And I just think that is something that we have to address as a nation.
I think it's a great analogy. I mean, I think it's to the point now, it's like water or electricity or any other basic utility. Everybody needs to have the same access to that service, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Mark, and I think,
how about you?
Yeah, good question. I think it's forcing us to have some serious conversation about looking at our school calendar and structure, I think we have to step away from this idea that 1 year of instruction and 1 year growth, and that, we go to school for 9 months and then 3 months off, and that learning happens between the hours of 9 a.m. to 3 in the afternoon, and with 4 walls and a ceiling. I think everyone's worried about the gap, the missed learning opportunities. Well, absolutely. There's no shame in that. We went through in a global pandemic, the likes of which nobody's ever seen in since 100 years. And so, yes, there are kids that will be missing concepts that they did not have the same amount of instructional time. But as long as we're looking at it through the lens of what we have been for 100 years about, okay, well, school starts in September, it gets out in June. You come to school at 8 in the morning, you leave at 4 in the afternoon. We need to have some serious conversations about how learning doesn't have to be so linear. We can provide, identify power standards, look at opportunities for kids to demonstrate mastery. Some districts are dabbling in competency-based education. I think having virtual options will be here to stay now. For many districts, will continue to offer virtual options or hybrid options. Maybe some classes are taken online, some are taken in person. Maybe schedules aren't necessarily Monday through Friday. Maybe it's more, the higher education has adopted that model. Maybe we could take a page from what they're offering at colleges and universities about extended learning. Maybe our high school kids take a class at 6 in the evening or 7 in the evening, instead of 7:15 in the morning. So I think we're having some serious conversations. I think all districts are racing to figure out what we can do to support kids. We have some programs in our district, recovery education services, to try to recover some of this lost time. I think districts are scrambling to put something together over the summer, and extend those opportunities to really reach out to parents, and parents really be partners in trying to help the kids where they're missing some of the foundational skills. So I'm hoping that this leads us to a broader, K-12 conversation across the nation about the role of public education and how we deliver services to kids.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting you said that. And as you were talking, it dawned on me, right, that because the pandemic has transformed the way we're looking at work, right, and workplaces. Certainly my life is completely different than it was a year ago. I spent 25% of my life or more on an airplane and all that stuff. I haven't been on an airplane in over a year. It's crazy. But so, and I think the way we're looking at the workplace, now the way we're looking at education, I think people will be more open-minded to those things because they realize that it can be done different ways. I think we were sort of stuck in going down a certain path. And I think if anything positive came out of this, it sort of opened up what we think is possible, right? In terms of education and work and everything. It's very interesting. Well, thank you guys very much. What another great discussion, and I really appreciate all your time and support. It was a great discussion. Is there anything you want to say before I turn it back over to Kevin?
No, thank you. Great conversation. Always great to talk with you guys and just have these professional conversations. I think as educators, we probably don't talk to colleagues enough, and just to reach out to colleagues outside of our walls and see what's going out, what ideas are out there. So thank you. Good learning experience for me today.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, thank you. I think it was great. Great conversation.
Great. Well, thanks, Mark and Dan. And so at this point, I'll pass it back over to Kevin for some Q&A and some closing comments. Thank you very much.
Great. Gentlemen, thank you all for a really insightful conversation. I've done a number of these over the years, and you can always tell when a conversation is successful when you have a number of questions that are coming in from the audience. We have a ton of them. We don't have enough that we can handle through these next few minutes. but be assured that if you put in a question from the audience, that you will get an answer back from one of the folks at Epson who will make sure that we get those details from you. One that came in that that you guys didn't address, I don't believe in the conversation, had to do around professional development. How did you handle career and tech courses for teachers that needed skills training in a remote setup? Can you talk a little bit about that? I mean, you talked about that kind of severe transition over. Once you got people connected, they probably still, the teachers themselves needed help, right? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure, Dan,
No, go ahead, Mark.
yeah, so I think what we realized pretty quick is we needed to offer different methods of professional learning. That professional learning also has to change, just like instruction has to change. So we identified instructional coaches at all of our schools. We were able to quickly identify that every school had a teacher that operated as the instructional coach. We paid them a stipend, a modest stipend, and they were the first go-to for teachers that needed to reach out and get a quick question answered. We also had a tiered level 1, 2, and 3 tech support system. We implemented a hotline for teachers, that a tech support hotline that was answered by one of our tech personnel during the day. And we had our help desk ticket system where teachers could put in help desk tickets and it was routed to the appropriate technology person. We did a lot of training of our support staff, our principals, our paras, our secretaries, our special education staff. We realized that everybody needed to have a base knowledge about login and password recovery and email archive and Google Classroom and how to use the Epson tools for instruction. We created cheat sheets, colorful cards, laminated, put by our phone. So when our secretaries would pick up the phone, have a question from a parent or even a staff member, they could help. It was all hands on deck. It wasn't. Whereas 2 years ago, everything went to the tech department to be solved. This year, we were all trying to solve problems and helping each other. And parents too, our tech department put websites together. We had instructional videos for parents on how to, charge a Chromebook and how to log in and, how to get into Google Classroom. We created videos for our teachers. We created a dedicated website and putting a knowledge base, frequently asked questions, how-tos, and it continues to grow and grow and grow. And I think our best defense is an educated staff, and the more you educate your staff on technology, then the fewer problems that you have.
Yeah, we did, very similar in Des Moines. We created an expanded help desk. We call it the Family Staff Support Line. So teachers, parents, students, anybody could call for any technical support they needed. We also had weekly admin meetings with all our building leaders. So everybody was on the same page. I mean, they didn't have to wonder about what was going on because we communicated very well every week. We also had coaches in every we already had them in place. So we have a coach at every building that kept their building going. And then they met weekly also. And again, like Mark said, all hands on deck. Everybody was there. And we just, we have a very robust intranet. And so everything was online. There was videos made. If they needed one-on-one, I mean, we made arrangements for that. So yeah, we just did everything. We thought outside the box of, just every scenario and tried to fill those gaps. And I think a lot of that will continue.
Sure.
So another question coming in, and this kind of it dovetails to some of the things that both of you mentioned earlier in the conversation. Dan, you mentioned your virtual academy or your completely remote option that you put in place for students. And Mark, both you and Dan also talked about this renewed emphasis on social emotional aspects of things, not only social emotional learning for students, but an understanding of the traumas that the teachers are going through as well as other administrators. Mm-hmm. What other techniques do you see or strategies do you see staying in place here now once the madness subsides, hopefully sooner than later? I mean, are there things that you think that will be not only fundamentally change, but fundamentally improve the way you teach and learn?
Well, just the first thing that popped in my mind, and Mark had mentioned it earlier, is always having a virtual option. I can think of an example. We had some students and gifted and talented that they had full schedules and they wanted to take more. So now they can take a virtual class. We have some families that, especially in the high schools, the junior and seniors, that the kids who have jobs. So now they can take a virtual class. They can work in the morning and go to school in the afternoon. That was kind of in place before, but now we have a really robust virtual option for them. And like you said too, it's some of our departments, and I'll use my own department for an example of technology. We don't need an office space anymore. We have proven that we were more productive. We got more done, less interruptions. I mean, I am still just amazed how much work we were able to get done since last March. I mean, we are so far ahead and doing projects that we were scheduled 2 and 3 years out. And they're getting done. So we were a lot more productive. So I think, especially with school budgets, you talk about that. An example of ours would be, 85% of our budget is people and everything else is things. Well, when you start looking at office space, that gets pricey. And, so I think we can look at real estate now in the future and maybe not have 2 or 3 admin buildings. Maybe we won't need those in the future. Maybe we'd have more of our workforce working from home or from a remote place.
Well, and I apologize if we have any students listening to this webinar, but I don't think snow days are going to be, I think snow days are a day of the past now. So
that's true.
I can hear the boos out there, but in Michigan, like in Midwest and a lot of the northern states, we would have 4 or 5 snow days a year, which was a day off. Well, now I think a snow day, we just go virtual and kids log into Google Classroom and voila, there's their teacher. To the disappointment of kids, but I think, that's something we've proven that we can deliver instruction in a quality manner, virtually. It may not be ideal. Nothing replaces the physical contact that we have with kids in the classroom, with the peers and the interaction with the adults, but we can teach virtually and do a good job at it.
Yeah, I think the mental health day will be the new snow day, right? I know with my kids' schools, there are a couple like, you know what, it snowed, we can do this, but like, let's take the day and we'll all click in tomorrow, right?
Maybe we'll have tech upgrade day. It's like a couple days a year we have to do district-wide tech upgrades. So we'll shut everything down, do the upgrades.
One other quick question about the use of synchronous technologies versus async. So even the conversation we're having here, I know that there are a lot of benefits of having school board meetings this way, as well as teacher conferences and back to school nights. Do you see this as something that might continue as a dynamic in your districts?
Sure. I mean, here's a great example. So here's a live webinar. So you've got some people tuning in live and it's being recorded. And so there'll be people that, 8 o'clock tonight, 7 o'clock Saturday morning. So the learning, the content can be accessible and retrievable on a mobile device, a screen, a laptop, a tablet. So we've proven that we can take rich content, package it, and deliver it in different methodologies. I think, yeah, you're right. School board meetings, staff meetings, those type of things. We can do this and we can do it well and it can be productive and we can be more selective of when to have an in-person meeting or when to have a Zoom meeting. I think it'll create some efficiencies. Dan mentioned admin meetings. In the past, if I had like a 2 o'clock admin meeting, I'd have to leave my school about 1:30, travel over there, have the admin meeting. It takes about a half an hour to travel back. Now, if it's a 2 o'clock meeting, I can stay right here at school right up until 5 minutes before 2 and still have an interaction with people and still open documents and read articles and watch a video and do a connector activity. And so I think we've proven that we can do this. I think the physical space, that now has become a little bit of that negotiable tool, whereas before it was kind of non-negotiable. We needed to have office space. Well, I think Dan might be onto something about, districts are always looking at ways to economies of scale and to budgets. And maybe we need to look at that, real estate as something that we might be able to trim.
Yeah. Well, I see that our time is just about up. So I'm going to wrap it up here. Again, if you submitted a question that we didn't get to, we will certainly follow up with you shortly and make sure that that gets answered. I'd like to once again thank our presenters for a really informative presentation. And I'd like to thank all of the audience members for joining us as well. As a reminder, you'll get an email within the next few days that contains a link to this recording along with the slides. Thanks again for participating and have a great day.
Thank you.